Wow! Welcome to Streamside Stories with Ryan. I'm Ryan. Kick back and never mind. Well, it's a little better than on the side of the stream that we were at. So the stream is down there about 800 vertical feet, but we're up here, what we call Mount Huff and Puff, outside of Horseshoe Bend, Idaho. It's one of my favorite places in Boise County. So hope you all are doing well. Got a haircut the other day, something that I call the COVID chop. A roommate of mine and good friend Adam Miller, put his name out there in the sphere. We needed haircuts, and so we'd never cut hair before. We thought, how hard could it be? So we gave each other haircuts. And so, I mean, it could be a lot worse. I think Adam did a pretty good job. I don't have a picture of Adam, but just know that he is not content with his haircut. And at one point I yelled out, oops, and he went, oops, what do you mean oops? Ah! He's always had long hair. He said he came into this world with long hair, and now he has hair that is the shortest that he's ever had. He goes, what am I, a GI or a convict? And anyway, so Adam, I apologize, and if you give me another chance, I bet I can do a little better. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully it won't come to that. But I appreciate you guys tuning in for some more Streamside stories. It's only about 100 yards out, but then 800 feet down. So today, we're going to talk about ankles. Ankles is a very weird word, but I find a severe amount of delight of seeing people's ankles as they fly through the air. Sometimes they're mine, sometimes they're other people. So I have a few stories to tell you about times that I found particularly funny with ankles in the air. I was not a very gifted child athletically, and I fell down a lot. Growing up, we were too poor or didn't want to invest money or whatever you want to call it to go downhill skiing, but we did a lot of cross-country skiing. And that was something that to this day I love. And as I got to be a little bit older, 12 or 13, my family found out about this race called the Hog Loppet in the Cascades. It started at a resort called Mission Ridge, and it went to Blewett Pass, about 20 miles, and these big pulls and hills and downs and all that, and some of it was on trail and some of it was off-piste. My dad and a good family friend decided that my buddy Benny and I, who is going to be featured prominently in these stories today, are old enough to go and do this Hog Loppet. And so apparently in Norse language, it means citizen race. Growing up, we just told everybody that we let a pig loose and chased it around on skis, and the first one to chop off an ear won. But that's not true at all. So the day of the race, we trained. It wasn't good at all. You know, I'm a 13-year-old boy that can barely stand up straight. I twisted my ankles all the time. And I'd never ridden a chairlift, and the first part was getting on a chairlift and riding up. It was this awesome experience. It's midwinter, you know, light snow is falling, and my buddy Benny and I are riding up the chairlift like, well, this is pretty cool. We get all the way to the top of Mission Ridge. It's almost 7,000 feet. There's Mount Rainier and Glacier, and then we take off down this cold snow. It's crunching under our skis, and it's slightly downhill. I'll never forget the first corner that we turned. And there's this huge steep hill and probably 100 people lined up, almost single file going up. It reminded me of the old pictures in Juneau of the miners in Alaska going up that rope. And still to this day I can remember it. It was like, whoa. That was the happiest moment of that race, because from there we got off-piste. Off-piste meaning an unprepared slope. I didn't do much off-piste cross-country skiing. During that time, I fell down, I broke my pole, I hurt my hand, I ripped my pants from the knee to the crotch. I lost count of the amount of times I fell down, but on one hill, I was going down in a death wedge like this, and then it locked and I fell over. And as I fell over, I could see my feet fly above my head. They're not cloven hooves. I could see my feet fly over my head, and it was light, dark, cold, light, dark, cold, light, dark, cold. Total garage sale, bent the SNS binding mode, or my 3-pin, whatever I had at the time, broke my pole and tore my pants. I think I also cut myself, but there was some applause from some other participants, and the rest of the day I had a big rip up my pants. We, splinted my pole, But that was the first time I can remember being like, huh, those are my ankles, and they're flying over my head, doing what's called a tomahawk, flying through the air down there. While that is the first one I can remember, it's definitely not the last. And so I don't know what it is about ankles. I think it's mainly because our ankles, which is a funny word, are pointed down to the ground most of the time. So to see them in the air, not on purpose, is really comical. Fast forward a few years, my buddy Benny and I are in raft guide training. And we trained with a guy whose risk management perspective is very different than the one that mine is today. I probably mentioned him in another story or so, but he didn't think that you were going to be a good guide unless you had flipped your boat in all the rapids. Maybe not that bad of an idea on some levels, but we were on the Wenatchee River, springtime flows, and we went into the snow hole on, I think it's called no, that's another river. I don't know. This big hole. I've run too many rivers now. I can't remember them all. But on the Wenatchee, I think it's doesn't matter. And he goes, "All right, we're going sideways." He turns the boat sideways, and we hit the hole. And this is going to be from my perspective and then Ben's. But from my perspective, the next thing that happened is the boss man, who is a very large man, comes straight at me and decides to use me as a life raft. We go flying upstream into the current, and his weight pushes me down to the bottom. I bounced off the bottom of the river and then came up on the other side underneath the hole, and we're still in the rapid, but it's petering out. It's a pool drop river. Get to the boat, flip the boat over. We all get back in, and we're counting. There were 5 of us in the boat, but we needed 6. Like, where's my buddy Benny? No, and all of a sudden, he shoots up on the side. He goes, "Bah!" Because he'd been underwater for a very long time. And from Ben's perspective, he was on the downstream side of the boat, so as it flipped, he was flung up in the air. And as we hit sideways, here we go, Ben got catapulted up into the air. And from there, he had a great view. And as he tells the story, everything slowed down. He could see the big boss man running into me. He could see my ankles flying up into the air, all in slow motion. And then he saw his water bottle. He's like, "Hey, that's my water bottle." And then he saw his ankles, and then everything went black. He came up underneath the raft, and then as it flipped, he had kind of moved, and the boat fell on top of him, and it was a big, long thing, but he was underwater for a good little time. But for him, the idea of, the ankles in slow motion, and mine, and a big boss man shoving into me, it's pretty hilarious. So it is good to train flipping your boat in rapids before you have clients. I am a proponent of that. But another one when it comes to rafting was here in Idaho, and this is where I laughed really hard. We were training new guides. It was spring flows, and there's a class 3 rapid called Go Left or You're Fired. And we were training that day, and there's just one little diagonal wave that if you don't hit it right, it can flip you. Not that big of a deal. A clean wash and that kind of stuff on the way out. But with a new guide that's training, his name's Chili. Chili got his nickname because we were out rafting in the snow. He looked over at me one day and went, "I'm Chili." I go, "Yeah, you are." He maintained Chili the rest of the time. But we're training. He's about halfway through. This is the time of training when you know quite a bit, but it's all coming together, and so it's just not quite to proficiency yet. We go in, and it becomes obvious that we're not keeping our angle. We try to maintain the angle, we don't, and the boat goes up, and that time there was this one young gal, and she got catapulted way out of the boat. And I remember as I'm going underwater, I'm watching her ankles and chuckling to myself. I thought it was kind of humorous. We go in the water, we flip it back over, give everyone in, and poor Chili's a little mortified. We're like, "It's okay, it happens." Everyone was fine. Get back in the boat, and at lunch, my boss like, "What happened? We can't, it's just." I'm like, "Well, how about this? Why don't you take Chili down this time, and then you can show me the right route that we want to run." He goes, "Okay." So Chili and boss are going down, and I've got another new trainee guide in there. As they go down, I'm like, "Huh, looks like they're taking the exact same line that I took. Huh, you know what? Looks like they're gonna flip." Well, there they go. And as as the boss man was flying out of the air, and his ankles were, it was like he was kicking to try to like maintain some kind of equilibrium in the air, but he was flutter kicking all the way over. And this could be my imagination or it could be reality, I don't know, but I heard a Dika! And so a lot of times people, as they're kicking their ankles in the air, make just the funniest sounds ever. There he went over. And so we went to go try and help, but I was laughing so hard the entire time that the thought that maybe I was even manic. But this today, even this image of his fluttering ankles, it was just the most beautiful thing that you've ever seen. It was so poetic, and the motion so pure, and the sound so terrifying. Everyone was fine. We got back in the boat. Chili became a very competent guide, one that I trusted a lot, and it was part of training. Nothing against him or anybody else, just a funny story. So one of the cool things about being in the outdoors is we get a chance to celebrate those learning things. Most of the time it's a pretty good learning environment. And yeah, ankles. The last one I'll tell is about me. And my wife Susan and I had been on a ski course, or a ski traverse through the Bonington Range in Canada, and it was a crazy trip. High temperatures, big swings, and that kind of stuff. Even kicked off an avalanche. The last night we stayed in this old miner's cabin that was infested with mice. We did it with some of our good friends in Canada, Mikey and Bonnie, and we got the fireplace too hot in the cabin, and so we opened up the door, which only extrapolated the problem, but there were mice and everything, and I had a mouse run into my mouth, and I'm terrified of mice, and it was a horrible night, that kind of thing. And as we're going out, it's raining, we're wading through creeks up to here with just water pouring into our boots, and we finally got out. We hugged each other, and they went back to their home, and we were gonna head south, but you know what? We could go to Schweitzer, and we could spend the night in a hotel room, and we did, and it was wonderful. The next morning, it had snowed a little bit, and we were able to go out and ski, and we hadn't done a ton of skiing on this trip. It was a lot of traversing and route finding and that kind of stuff, but not a lot of big open, Canadian rocky lines like sometimes I like. And we were riding up at Schweitzer, and it's that first initial push as everyone's got powder fever. We get up to the top, and I was overwhelmed with the motion, and I jump off this little lip and start skiing down. And then good skiers, they never fall down because it's their fault. They fall down because of external forces, most notably snow snakes or snow gremlins. And some snow snake wrapped its leg around my leg, pulled me down, double ejected, and I tomahawked the hardest I have in my entire life. I lost my hat, my glasses, my glove, my pants, because of the centrifugal forces, came down to my knees. So I'm tomahawking down this slope while, my pants are down. So if you look from the top of where I crashed to where I ended up, just this whole yard sale of gear, and I'm sitting there the whole time as I'm going down. It's light, dark, cold, and I'm thinking, this is another great ankle story. I get down to the bottom, partially naked, laying there in the snow, underneath the chairlift line, and there's silence. And then finally, there's applause. I like to believe that I stood up and took a bow. I don't know if it was a bow or more of just, I'd lost my equilibrium, but it was a great moment to show off underneath the chairlift line. So as we spend more and more time outdoors, we'll find these little things that bring us a great amount of joy. Maybe it's a sunrise. Maybe it's the sound of water over rocks. I don't know. Everyone has their thing that they look for that adds a special element, a special gift to them when they're out in creation. So I hope you can find that. For me, sometimes it's finding a little bit of enjoyment in seeing people's ankles up in the air, or mine as well. So thanks for tuning in. Hope to see you next time.